On February 5, 2025, after spending 12 years on death row, Stephen Lawayne Nelson was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville Unit in Texas. His death came just 13 days before his 38th birthday. He had been convicted of the brutal murder of a young pastor inside his own church, a case that left a deep scar on the community. Today we recall his story from his final moments to the crime that put him on death row. This documentary contains factual descriptions that may be sensitive to some viewers. It is presented with care, respect, and the intention to inform. Stephen Lawayne Nelson was born on February 18, 1987, in the city of Ada, Oklahoma. His childhood was marked by abandonment, neglect, and domestic violence. He grew up in a deeply dysfunctional environment. His mother, far from offering basic care, would disappear for 3 to 4 days at a time, leaving the children completely alone without food or supervision. His father, meanwhile, was mostly absent, and when he was around, he inflicted physical and emotional abuse on both his wife and children. Stephen's sister had a hearing disability, which added more pressure on the siblings to survive in extreme conditions. By age 3, Stephen was already exhibiting highly disturbing behavior. One day, he dragged his mother's mattress into the living room and tried to set it on fire. That early action was one of the first signs of severe emotional dysregulation. By the age of 6, he was involved in petty thefts, break-ins, and aggressive conduct. Although Oklahoma's juvenile system took notice, institutional responses were insufficient or delayed. He was sent to a high-security juvenile facility at a very young age, a place that, far from rehabilitating him, reinforced his isolation and antisocial behavior. Later, the family moved to Texas in search of a fresh start, but the story repeated itself. Instability, lack of emotional support, and negative influences persisted. At age 14, he was arrested for vehicle theft, breaking and entering, and unauthorized use of property. In an unusual move, the judge imposed an indefinite sentence in the Texas juvenile system, typically reserved for violent offenses. Although it was supposed to be a 9-month stay, Stephen ended up spending more than 3.5 years in juvenile custody due to multiple rule violations. His record included at least 4 high-level disciplinary hearings. Upon reaching adulthood, he was released on parole twice, but he repeatedly violated the terms. At 18, he was arrested for driving a stolen car. In 2007, he committed 2 consecutive thefts at Walmart. In the first, he hid a laptop in his clothes while pretending to be an employee. In the second, he wore out a pair of new boots without paying. In 2010, after being released from prison, he physically assaulted his then-partner. Prosecutors charged him with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Although the victim submitted a non-prosecution affidavit, the district attorney denied it due to Nelson's extensive criminal record. He was sentenced to probation and sent to the Intermediate Sanctions Facility for 90 days. At the time of the 2011 crime, Stephen was still formally under judicial supervision but had missed his latest appointment with his probation officer. On the morning of March 3, 2011, a Thursday, everything seemed calm at North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. Inside the building was Pastor Clint Dobson, 28, a charismatic young man deeply committed to his community. He was known for remembering everyone's name and genuinely asking how they were. Also present was 69-year-old Judy Elliott, the church secretary known for her loyalty, kindness, and perfect attendance record. At 9 a.m., Stephen Nelson entered the church. He wasn't there to pray, he was there to rob. What followed was a sudden wave of violence. According to the reconstruction of events, he attacked Pastor Clint first. It is believed he used a computer monitor stand as a weapon, striking Clint on the head. Clint tried to defend himself but was overpowered. Nelson strangled him with a computer cord and then suffocated him with a plastic bag. He then turned to Judy Elliott with extreme brutality. She suffered multiple fractures to her skull, face, arms, legs, and spine. Her face was so disfigured that her own husband didn't recognize her. She also suffered a brain hemorrhage and lost consciousness before the attack ended. After Nelson believed his task was done, he stole Clint's laptop, cell phones, Judy's credit cards, and her car keys. He calmly walked out as if it were just another day. He drove the stolen car and used the credit cards to buy gas, cigarettes, and drinks. Later, he went to Parks Mall in Arlington and bought an Oscar the Grouch t-shirt, Air Max sneakers, and costume jewelry, all paid with Judy's cards. He returned later with friends but couldn't make further purchases as the cards had been canceled. That night, at a friend's apartment, Stephen showed off his new items wearing the t-shirt, shoes, and jewelry. He openly confessed what he had done, that he had robbed a pastor and attacked people at a church. After taking pills and smoking, he sent several text messages to his cousin. One read, "It might be the last time." Another said, "I did some the other day, cuz." And finally, "I up bad cuz real bad." For the first time, he seemed to acknowledge the magnitude of his actions. Around noon, members of the congregation started to worry. Clint Dobson had planned to meet church member Dale Harwell for lunch, but never arrived or called. Deborah Jenkins, another church member, arrived at 12:40 p.m. and noticed both Clint's and Judy's cars parked outside, but the building was eerily quiet. She knocked and rang the bell, but got no answer. Feeling uneasy, she left, only to return 15 minutes later to find Judy's car gone. Clint's wife, Laura Dobson, had also been calling repeatedly without response. Distressed, she contacted Jake Turner, the church's music minister, who in turn contacted John Elliott. John went straight to the church and used his access code. Inside, he found chaos. Papers scattered, drawers open, furniture overturned. Then he saw a bloodied woman on the floor, so badly beaten he didn't recognize his wife. He called 911. Officer Jesse Parrish arrived and discovered Clint's body behind the desk, tied up with a collapsed plastic bag over his face. Judy was barely alive. She was rushed to the hospital where she suffered cardiac arrest but survived. She underwent reconstructive surgery and 5 months of intensive therapy. She recovered enough to identify Nelson as her attacker. Police already had clues. Nelson had missed his probation check-in that day. Security footage showed him using the credit cards, and his car contained the victim's belongings and blood-stained shoes. Fingerprints at the scene matched. He was arrested and charged with capital murder. Another young man, Anthony Springs, was also arrested, but later released due to lack of evidence. While awaiting trial in Tarrant County Jail, Nelson engaged in multiple violent incidents. On March 19, 2012, he murdered inmate Jonathan Holden, a man with a history of mental illness. Nelson lured Holden to the cell bars, fashioned a noose from a bedsheet, and strangled him to death. He later celebrated by playing a broom like a guitar. In 2014, Holden's family sued the county and received a $350,000 settlement. At trial, Nelson blamed Springs and Claude Jefferson, claiming he only robbed but did not kill. The jury was not convinced. Springs was 30 miles away at the time, and Jefferson's alibi and exam was refuted by a professor. On October 8, 2012, the jury found Nelson guilty. During sentencing, prosecutors presented his entire history: childhood crimes, prison violence, and the Holden murder. A psychiatrist diagnosed Nelson with ADHD and antisocial personality disorder. On October 16th, he was sentenced to death. In anger, he broke a courtroom sprinkler, flooding the room. He was transferred to the Pastor Unit, where he spent 12 years on death row. He filed numerous appeals. In 2015, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denied them. In 2017, federal judge John H. McBride rejected his petition. In 2020, the Fifth Circuit upheld that decision. In 2023, the same court dismissed his final attempt. On June 10, 2024, Judge Stephen Jooms signed the execution order. On February 3, 2025, in a final interview, Nelson maintained his innocence, insisting he only committed robbery.
There's many innocent people here on death row or in prison that shouldn't be here. It's hard at times, you know, because you're waiting to be put to death. So that kind of breaks a little part of you every day. Kind of breaks you every day. And sometimes I have to catch myself, you know, for being overwhelmed and stressed out. and like force myself to eat because it does that to you where you just don't want to do nothing.
On February 5th, 2025, he was transferred to the Huntsville Unit. He was not granted a special last meal and ate the standard prison dinner. He was Texas's first execution of the year and, as of July, the youngest. At 6:26 p.m., the injection began. In his final words, he addressed his wife, whom he had married by mail 3 months earlier. "I will always love you no matter. Our love is uncontrollable. I'm at peace. I'm ready to be at home. Let's ride, Warden." He looked toward the witness room, whispered love, and his body tensed. He was pronounced dead at 6:50 p.m. The Dobson family issued a statement honoring his dedication to faith and community. Several churches, Catholic, Methodist, and Episcopal, opposed the execution. Nonetheless, most American Christians continued to support capital punishment, according to a 2021 poll. Judy Elliott's family, though they had forgiven Nelson, chose not to comment publicly. Her son, representing her memory, witnessed the execution. This case is filed, but your comment could reveal new evidence, and with a like and a subscription, you'll help uncover new cases. For now, this story is filed. Choose the next case file and continue the investigation.